Hi, I was looking at these edible butterflies, and a couple people have written to me and said, are they supposed to be printed on both sides? And no, they're not. The reason that it's difficult to print, like you have this large page, a sheet of printed wafer paper. To print it on both sides, you would have to be able to line the print up exactly if you flip the image over, and it takes time. It takes a while to figure that out, and also every time you put it through the printer, the paper could be in a different position, so it's difficult to print wafer paper on both sides so that the images back up to each other perfectly. So the easier way to do butterflies that have two sides as opposed to one side, see, I'm sure, okay, this is printed on this side and this side is white, and you can't see it because it's shining through, but there's nothing printed on this side. um, so you only have one side image. When you put this on a cake, it's not really tremendously obvious, but some people like to have them with the picture on both sides so that when you bend the wings like this, it actually looks more like a real butterfly. So you don't have to worry about the white showing here. That's what I'm talking about. So I've done a whole bunch of these. I'm going to tilt this down. The way to get these to look two-sided is to just attach two images together. But to do that, you need to have a picture that is either cut with a paper punch or die cut so that they're symmetrical. And I'll use this one since I was holding this one up. These are die cut, so they're exactly the same. They're exactly the same shape front to back. So I could put those together and it's not going to look, like there's not going to be white pieces that stick out because they're symmetrical. So what I'm using is the gelatin and glycerin mix, and I'll put the recipe for that. You want to just get a little bit of this. You can also use piping gel or corn syrup, but those are going to dry a little bit stiffer. So it's up to you. If you can't get this mix or you don't want to make it, just use some corn syrup, but then position the butterflies as they're drying the way that you want them to be, because it's going to stiffen up. And you want to press this very carefully so that it lines up. I'll make sure you guys can see what I'm doing. There you go. And when you brush the gelatin and glycerin mix on, you want to make sure that you're getting the edges, because the edges are where they're going to separate if they're going to separate. Now see, on this one, I don't have the tail lined up completely perfect. That's okay. I can go back and trim that with scissors when that dries. So I will do another one since I wasn't really paying attention to the camera. All right, so you take this just a little bit, and I'm using a very non-soaking wet brush. It's not a dry brush, but it's enough to get this wet without really soaking the paper, because you don't want to melt the paper. You just want to wet it. Okay, and then I'm going to line this up very carefully here. Press that, and just, work your way around, and then give it a good press on the edges. Now you do want to be careful that the ink doesn't start smearing. If you start rubbing this, then see the ink is coming off on my hands just a little bit. So you want to be careful about that. Then bend it into position, and you can just let it dry like that so that when it dries, it's two-sided, and you can put that on the cake and it's not going to be as obvious that there's a white side that is not printed. So that's basically it. I just wanted to show you that. And just remember to look for butterflies that are die cut or cut with a paper punch. And some of the ones that I've designed so that they can be cut out with a paper punch. And some of the ones I cut out by hand. So the ones that are cut out by hand, it's going to be more difficult to line them up because they might be non-symmetrical, when you put them together. But like, see on this one, the die cut slipped and it left a little white mark. So it's not a big deal. All you have to do is take some scissors and just trim that off. And there, it's not a critical thing, but it's just easier to do if you have the patterns line up. See, it just looks like his head's a little narrower, that's all. But you can cut that off, bend it, put it on the cake. It's not noticeable, that's all. So those are cute for cupcake toppers and that kind of thing if you want them two-sided. If you have any questions, leave them for me. I'll post the recipe for this stuff because this is good to attach wafer paper to itself. It doesn't dry hard. It doesn't dry stiff. It's flexible. So just leave me any questions.